Now, leaders from NATO's 32 member countries are gathering in Washington, D.C. for a summit to address challenges facing the world's most powerful military alliance. Now, the gathering takes place against the backdrop of Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine and at a time when the attention of several national leaders is firmly on domestic politics. Now, to discuss what all this means for the alliance, we're joined by DW correspondent Kate Ferguson. Thank you for your time here on NewsDesk. Now, what are the biggest challenges NATO is facing right now?
NATO's biggest challenge right now is maintaining unity in a world the alliance itself describes as the most dangerous security environment since the Cold War. Now, since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we've seen member states come together to support the country both militarily and financially, and NATO has in fact grown, with Sweden and Finland recently joining. But what is really at stake right now is the reliability of US leadership. Should Donald Trump win the American election later this year, support for Ukraine cannot be taken for granted anymore. Now, Trump's been very critical of countries that underspend on defence, and earlier this year he even said that he would encourage Russia to, quote, do whatever the hell they want to any NATO member that does not meet its spending targets. So ensuring continued American support for NATO under Biden or Trump, or potentially even somebody else, will be a really big challenge for the new NATO boss, Mark Rutte, who takes over from Jens Stoltenberg in October.
But what kind of role is Europe expected to play when it comes to NATO in the future?
Yeah, this is such a key question, especially in the context of potentially lessening US interest in NATO. European leaders are, in the most part, enthusiastic members of the alliance, but the problem is that many of their leaders are very distracted by problems at home. The UK has just elected a new leader, Keir Starmer. He's inherited a whole host of challenges from his predecessor. And in France, Emmanuel Macron is trying to deal with a really unexpected election result that's seen no party win a clear majority. And even here in Germany, Olaf Scholz has his own issues trying to govern with a pretty fragile coalition. What I should say, though, is that all three of these big European powers will now be led by centre-left governments which believe in multilateralism and in NATO as an institution. And I think if there were a vacuum of leadership, we could see them stepping up, especially if Eastern countries like Poland and the Baltics, which have a much more visceral experience of Russian aggression, were to gain a more powerful voice.
In NATO, what kind of relationship is the alliance developing with non-members in the global south and beyond?
This is a really important point to make. NATO is a Western alliance at a time when the balance of power on the world stage is really shifting away from the West. And there are certainly voices in the global south, whether that's in India, Brazil or South Africa, that would accuse the alliance of hypocrisy, saying that its interest in defending this rule-based international order only applies to certain parts of the world, and that while it may be very happy to help Ukraine, it's conveniently uninterested in other conflicts happening in, say, the Western Sahara, for example. Now, NATO, for its part, would argue that helping Ukraine is important for the world because if Russia were to win, other powers like China would be emboldened to show more military aggression in the South China Sea or towards Taiwan, perhaps. But this can be a pretty difficult argument to swallow, particularly for a country like South Africa, perhaps, which has fond memories of the Soviet Union helping to end apartheid while Western powers propped up that regime. I think NATO is aware of this perception, though, and there is a growing awareness that it has to engage more with non-Western perspectives, especially in a world that's becoming increasingly multipolar. But how that attempt at dialogue will be received is an open question.
Thank you, DW correspondent Kate Ferguson, joining us there with details. Thank you for your time here on NewsDesk. We'll be back.